Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate and Stuff. We're here live, not live, sorry. We recorded the show this week, but we're here to share some interesting things with you. We've got Papa P, Carlos, myself. Please follow us on YouTube, like and subscribe, so you get updates to the show. But we have some interesting topics today. The main one that we wanted to go over is a guide to kind of wholesaling employee compensation. We did a survey last week on, now I'm forgetting what that survey was on. Yeah. Anyways, we did a survey last week. It went well, so we're doing another one this week about employee compensation. Yeah, it'll be fun to kind of talk about that so that everybody can. I've spoken to people individually about it, but I've never gotten kind of like a consensus, and we got a good response rate of like what is it that the industry does for compensation for lead managers, acquisitions managers, stuff like that. So it'll be really fun to chat through that. What's going on with you guys?
I can't wait for that combo. I've been working on some systems operations software that deals specifically with employees and compensation and like how to log all that. So I'm eager for that conversation about employee comp. I think it's important for going into the new year, how much we're paying people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Carlos, what's going on, bro?
It smells like fall. I hear the crunch of some fresh mastic gum.
Oh, can you hear that? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You
I
hear?
like it.
Listen, bro, I keep it in a tin now. I'm carrying it with me at all times. I feel like I can definitely tell that like my facial muscles are different, like as I chew, and my jaw doesn't get tired as much anymore. Like I could chew this stuff all day long. But I've also realized that I'm becoming the guy who recommends stuff and then forces it on people. I was at lunch, and if this guy's listening, my bad, bro. I didn't mean to pressure you into eating my gum, but
at
it
the
was
country
like,
club or where?
no, I was at lunch. I met him in Orlando. He flew into town. We're talking about raising some money for some parks.
Oh,
So
cool.
I drove to Orlando and we had lunch downtown. And like after it was done, I wanted to eat some gum, so I like pulled out my gum and I'm like eating out of my tin. He's like, "What's that?" I was like, "Bro, you got to try this." And he was skeptical, and I kind of like forced it upon him, and I gave it to him. And then he was like, kind of like tacky, like trying to eat. I'm like, now I felt bad. I'm like, "Bro, if you don't like it, you can spit it out." But I could tell there was an awkward moment where he didn't want to let me down, and he continued to chew it, and it wasn't good. So I feel like I owe that guy an apology for forcing the gum upon him and making it an awkward situation. But mastic gum is good gum. I highly recommend it for people. No sugar, no additives. It's just it's great. It's good for your oral hygiene. Anyway, that has nothing to do with real estate. But that's that.
Yeah, man. One thing I was thinking about, just it comes up just talking to investors when they're potentially moving over to investor fuse, like if they have a lot of leads. Came up in an existing customer conversation the last week or two, and I think a lot of people may be in this spot. And it's something that's going to continuously happen because as you're just marketing, you're going to have a bunch of leads at some point. Hopefully, if you're successful marketing, you're going to have a bunch of leads. So I was curious, Papa P. I love this banner at the bottom too. It looks
I'm digging this too.
I'm digging it. But I'm curious for you, Papa P. Like, let's just start with a number. Like, say you have between 2,000 and 3,000 leads, varying of how old they are, different motivations, but they've came in from marketing. You've talked to them at some point.
Yeah. They're live leads technically.
Live leads, exactly. Yeah, they're not dead. What is the best way of kind of attacking those? I know we have some variables in place that people are going to say, "Oh, I have this that may be different." Team size, what tools you have to reach out to them, time to leverage, how many new leads you have coming in that you may want to be giving attention to. So I know it's kind of general, and there's some variables in play there. But what do you think is just like the most efficient way of, monetizing those leads, and then also, still giving tender love and care to the new leads coming in?
So when John had talked to me and I moved from Podio like 3-4 years ago or whatever it was over to Investor Fuse, I had the same problem. So it does go on your team size, right? Like you got to be very cautious. I never recommend putting all of your leads into your new CRM. Like I want to think of my new CRM as a fresh new life, like I'm starting clean and I want my new marketing, because you're going to set everything up differently, right? You're getting into a new CRM. You have this opportunity for a fresh start and really setting up automations and how you want stuff, because that's probably why you're switching to something like Investor Fuse, right? You want something better. So what I did was, and I had the ability where I had what's called a follow-up specialist, right? So I had some VAs on my team, or whatever you want to call them, follow-up specialists. I had callers, junior acquisition, you may call them too, or other people may say lead managers. I had a sync into smartphone pretty much. And what we did was we dialed those leads one at a time, or power dial. Nowadays, smartphone has a power dialer. I think we were doing it one, like a click to call function back in the day. But now you could push them into smart dialer. And I had John set me up a campaign called, I'm making this up, old leads from Podio, right? So that person's job, let's say I got 2,000, their job, and it took a month, was to literally every day dial every single lead in Podio. And once you get a hold of them, run through the gambit again and decide in our new Investor Fuse, like lead statuses or action items, what we call them over there, was basically to determine live or dead. Talk to them again. If they get a hold of them, if it's a solid lead, we push it into Investor Fuse. It then goes again into the closer bucket, where now my acquisitions can talk to them, or you could do a live transfer. If it's dead, then it's dead, right? Boom, done. If they're not a solid lead, it's just been lingering around and no one had the balls to kill that lead, dead. So that's what we did. And I had somebody separate that just did that. And then we had its own marketing campaign, and we made 6 figures from that. We made 6 figures from, I remember, because I did a podcast with John, or like an Investor Fuse call with John, where I was telling the story. It was like I had a couple deals. One of them was like a 70K deal that we revived or something from going through that list. And then we had other deals that came in from that campaign too. And then, of course,
that's
we're doing
what built resurfacing. That was like
that was why we
genesis of resurfacing.
Yeah, because we were like, oh shit, like we need to resurface these leads. So that's kind of what we did with those old leads, man. And I think a follow-up specialist, speaking of resurfacing, is the best thing you could do, because even when they get to Investor Fuse, Carlos, I'm assuming these people, if they stack 3,000 up inside Podio or whatever, they probably are going to stack more up inside of Investor Fuse, right?
Definitely. How different at all would it be, though? Let's say it's not somebody moving over from another CRM to Investor Fuse. What if they're longtime Investor Fuse, even on 3, and they're just like, okay, I have like so many old leads here. Like
Yeah,
they're already in the
I think you
system.
use the same strategy, right? So instead of creating new campaigns and stuff, so like one of the things, the genesis of resurfacing that Investor Fuse has, right, is so we set up rules. So like nothing is dead in our system. Like it has to be sold, or like a major FU type of situation, legal. I've never wanted to sell my house type of thing. But we kind of run that whole Dumb and Dumber line. So you're saying I have a chance, right?
What was all that 1 in a million talk?
Yeah. So we keep things going, but we move them out. So we keep our closer leads separate from our follow-up leads. I don't mean sequences or automations. I mean, if I'm a closer and somebody says, hey, I don't want to sell today, I'm keeping it, okay, fine. If someone says your offer's too low, if someone says, hey, I'm selling in 6 months, not today, somebody says something like that, we will take that lead and resurface it and move it into a new group. So it comes out of the closers bucket and hops into a follow-up specialist bucket. And then our follow-up specialist will just power dial them through our smartphone to Investor Fuse integration. So the reason why
Smart dialer, just to clarify, smart dialer
yes.
campaign. Okay, not single line click to call, because that's some conversations that are coming up too.
The only way we use single click to call is when you specifically have hot leads. You know what I mean? Someone says, call me tomorrow at noon and I'm signing this deal, or I'm available. We click to call those.
Yeah.
But otherwise we're smart dialing. But I think it's important to know that, like, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is giving too much work to their closers. And I believe in focus, right? You can't do too many things. I want my closers to be focusing on like 30 to 90 day pipeline, things that, they're actually building relationships with people who are ready to sell, hot leads in the next 30, 60 days, maybe 90. Anything else, I don't want them clogging their pipeline. So my closers bucket should be always owned. There should be nothing unowned in my closers bucket, and they should always be being worked with no overdues. And you should have contacts within like the last like 3 to 4 weeks. Anything over that is bad. And the reason why we're able to do this is because we don't just have leads sitting there. The closer are like, oh, I'm calling that guy in a year, and I'm calling that guy in 7 months. That one's not picking up for me. I'll call him again in a month or two. Like, that's not, if they're not picking up after so many calls, they said no, any of that, it moves out of the closer's pipeline and into a follow-up specialist pipeline or junior acquisition. And their job is to deal with that minutia, rewarm it up, and then pass it back off to a closer. And that's what you should do with old leads. You should never just have old leads sitting in what I call your acquisition or closers bucket. They should always be being worked by somebody that's a low pay, somebody who's not as high value to your organization. That's a wrong word too, because follow specialists have a huge value to an organization. Somebody that
producer cut that out.
Yeah, somebody that maybe doesn't have the skill set in closing a deal, but they're really good at talking and building rapport, but they're just not ready to actually do the contract closing. They're just really good people person type of follow-up specialist. So that's kind of, does that answer your question of kind of like how we do that?
It does. Honestly, maybe I should say this off air, but I'll let it rip. I would love to do some type of like consulting calls with Papa P, just on like CRM usage / like managing a sales team with Investor Fuse customers. Whether it's, we could probably make it group calls, but even individuals, because this is super good. And I guess they could listen to the podcast, but they'd want to be in their own space looking at it while talking to Brandon. But that's just so
and I've done that before,
efficient and
people.
insightful. Yeah. I know that you have.
I think it's important, but Carlos, at the same time, everyone runs their team a different way. Like, I don't believe in the lead manager setup, like fronting. Like, so, you didn't ask, but like the leads coming in, I feel like too many, and this is changing because of SMS and everything, too many people clog their CRM with unqualified leads. So they need a lead manager to, like, especially SMS, right? They're cold leads. I don't give a shit what you say. You push a lead over, they're not picking up the phone, so you're texting, right? That's their demographic or type of demographic they are for a lead type. And then all of a sudden you got a closer calling them. So you have lead managers, warm them up, set the stage, set an appointment maybe to talk to a closer. There's a lot of work up front for that. I personally, so like our cold call leads, I don't do SMS, but our cold call leads, they go through a QA bucket in ZenCall, meaning our cold callers will push a lead and it doesn't go to our CRM. It goes, if it's not live transferred, it goes into a QA bucket. A QA person reviews the call, reviews the notes, and then decides if it's worthy to be in our CRM or not. And when it comes over at that point, boom, it's a solid lead that I don't need a lead manager to determine if it's good or not. We do that on the front end of our lead generation and not inside of our CRM. And then the live transfers happen. And I guess I could say if you make a live transfer that's not good, you're going to have a talk. So we don't have any issue of quality there. I mean, we've had, but we'll have a talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to like what you want your top salespeople to have the time and energy for. Like, I think it comes down to like burnout and just like, time efficiency.
Burnout.
Well,
you know who coined that for me? And
burnout?
I've told you this before. Burnout. It was the first time I ever heard it. It was like 2017, before he was known for anything. Nick Perry. He got up on, we were at Raphael's event and he did like a Q&A with people in the audience. Nick raised his hand, went up and explained about how his agents were burnout. And I never thought of it until that day. And from that day forward, I've always considered how acquisition people get. And that's why he wanted PPC, he wanted less burnout. And you have to worry about that for your reps on cold call and SMS and RVM.
So yeah, if you can give them that ability where they know that they're being handed leads, and I've had this conversation with so many Investor Fuse people, like, they weren't doing a certain strategy, and then they come in and they've added in a new marketing strategy. And I'm just looking, I'm like, why is your best salesperson dealing with these leads?
Yeah,
like, and that's the great thing too. So, shameless plug here, but like, you can, inside of Investor Fuse, you could route your PPC leads directly to your top acquisitions people, and then you could route your cold call leads or your SMS leads to somebody else to qualify and then pass off to the senior acquisitions kind of deal. So I think it really does come down to that lead type, but the ultimate question is burnout and time efficiency, right? Like you want your top people spending time on leads that are motivated and qualified.
Yeah.
But
And that's why you
you
got to
should not be like
clean
sending your
pipeline.
PPC lead to
Yeah.
a lead.
The only way you're sending a PPC lead to anybody is like, so, I had a PPL lead, PPC, PPL, but like, and she wanted to list it with an agent, right? We got back
Mhm.
talking, da 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 da. That's now for follow-up specialists
Right, but
because
you had that
it's
initial
listed.
conversation. Yeah.
It's listed, but it's also listed extremely high. And that's not a dead lead. Now, I'm not going to keep following up with that lead because I've moved on to more important things because I'm a closer, right? I'm more valuable closing deals than following up with people.
Mhm.
So that's now a follow-up specialist. I've done my job. The lead is kind of dead, right? We still
Mhm.
call it dead, but I just use different terminology. And then it gets resurfaced back to life into the follow-up specialist group. Uh, yeah, I mean, so PPC, just because it's PPC doesn't mean you want to keep it in your thing forever. You want to
Right.
work it till you've worked it
Yeah.
dead, and then allow someone else to revive it, and you move on to the next best thing.
And if you're monitoring your cost per deals for each kind of campaign type, then you'll have a good understanding. Like I think a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, this lead cost me so much money. I've got to just like
You
stare
gotta
at
keep
it
it. And
forever."
VAs are afraid to do it because they're afraid of getting yelled at. So like you have follow specialist lead managers from the Philippines, from Costa Rica, from Egypt, wherever they are. They're also afraid to dead leads because they don't want to get in
Mhm.
trouble by
Mhm.
losing leads. So they'll just keep it going. And next thing you know,
Mhm.
you're gonna have all of these leads. And the opposite happens too, where you have the wrong people on your team.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I don't
You have to know when a lead you want to chew on like a piece of mastic gum versus a lead you want to chew on like a juicy fruit, like the one you can keep going
Juicy
after,
fruit.
and
Juicy fruit is the
one
worst
that's
gum. It's no, what was that zebra gum? That was baller for like the 10 seconds it lasted the flavor. Remember that zebra gum where
I
it was
do.
yeah.
I
like,
can't remember the company. I was trying to think of what was
yeah.
like the quickest gum to lose taste that you kind of spit out.
Juicy fruit is 100%. It is the best tasting gum, but it lasts
Mhm.
for like 15 seconds and then you just
Mm,
ah fucking
that's
juicy
okay,
fruit,
Tom.
dude. Anyway.
I will say, back to leads. The top teams that I have in investor fuse, they love the dead, like marking as dead. They highly recommend it. They like force their
Yeah.
users to do it. But on top of that, they closely monitor it. They have a lot of sub
Yes, you
reasons.
have to train on it, bro.
Mhm.
Like you have
Yeah.
it's a whole nother way of running a team. You have to train on it because
hmm
people will just be like, this is dead.
hmm
And then next thing you're like, wait, why is this dead? This isn't
hmm
like, why did you label it this? The person said they signed with somebody else. Your job, because that's within 30 days. So
hmm
if it's within 30 days, right, and John says, well, I'm going with Carlos to sell my house to, it's not sold, motherfucker. That stays in your pipeline, and your job in the next 3 weeks is to call back and see if John backed out of there, Carlos backed out of the deal because he offered too much. Because a lot of times that happens because if they beat you out, it means they offered more. And if you were already maxed out, high probability Carlos can't sell that deal.
hmm Yeah, you gotta watch it. You gotta monitor it. And there's like some nice new dashboards around dead reasons now inside of Investor Views that like
Yeah.
literally tell you the employees like who's marking the most things as dead. So you
Yeah.
can kind of get an idea there.
Well, yeah, that's what I think we do with that. I mean, Carlos, did that answer your questions, bro?
Thoroughly, thoroughly. The main thing I'm kind of stoked on is I would love to get just some Papa P, not like consulting, but it's just so valuable because that's where your money's at, and
Yeah.
people are everybody in the industry right now is being affected by different pretty drastic marketing changes. About as drastic as it's been since Investor Fuse has
Yeah.
been on the scene. So you really have to nurture and efficiently hit those leads, and it's such
Yeah.
a common thing that happens. Whether it's not even transferring CRMs, people signing up for Investor Fuse, but just people that have leads. People have leads and data that they just need to be efficiently hitting to, in these
That's the
times when there's not
yeah.
as many tractions going on. It's like, dude, just
Yeah.
get the most out of your leads.
Yeah, that's what I like about Investor Fuse when we kind of ramp that up, that whole resurfacing. I mean, you could do it in Podio, but it still requires somebody to click. Resurfacing is automatic, and that's the difference. You can't trust your employees. You trust them to do what you hired them to do, which is close deals, not to worry about statuses, not to worry. Like, that was the one thing that, I know we're getting off topic, but it's like, that's the one thing that pisses me off about people and their frickin' statuses. You hired a salesperson, not a paper pusher, a technologically advanced tech guy, wizard, guy who is operational and understands the meaning of your stat. That's not their job. Their job is to talk and close deals. That's the only thing that they should be doing. I got sick and tired of, like, you're not yelling, but you're reprimanding. Well, this isn't under op nurture. This isn't under this status. Why did you not push this as warm, cold, or hot? It's like, bro. And then after a while, you're like, dude, like, they're my sales guys. Their job is to close, not worry about my coding system.
Yeah.
So I try to minimize it as best as I can. Listen, here's your rules for keeping it in your pipeline. If it's outside of that, then you mark it as dead, and it automatically, they don't pick the sequences, they don't pick the resurfacing. That's the other thing. Your closer shouldn't be picking all that. It should be automated inside your CRM, and that's what InvestorFuse does. So anyway,
love it. All right, let's get into this guide to wholesaling employee compensation. So, like, I'm excited to learn about what you are working on over there, Brandon, and how this data might, change your opinion or enforce your opinion about.
Yeah, I'm anxious. I'm anxious. Let's do this.
What do you guys think? We go through the data first, and then
Yeah.
break it down? All right.
I want to see the data before I say anything, so that way I don't look like a tool bag.
All right, so we asked our users some questions. Our watching, make sure this does it right. All right, cool. There we go.
Holy shit! What is the fucking yellow or orange? What is that?
All right, how big is your team is the question. 36 people responded. All right, so just me was 2.9%.
Oh.
2 to 5 was 54%.
That's the orange or the yellow.
That's the yellow, yeah. The green is 5 to 10, so 34%. And then the orange there is 10 plus, so 8.6%.
Yeah.
So the majority of the people that responded to this survey have around 2 to 5 people on their team.
Yeah, and I imagine, I'm guessing here, because I'm sure you didn't clarify in your question. These are, I'm guessing, employed in office or like core team. They're not counting cold callers, SMSers, data cleaners, all that, maybe, is what I'm guessing.
I did not specify, I just asked a general question. So yeah, there might be some variance in the data there where somebody's like, they might have answered just, lead managers and acquisitions. And
that's what I'm thinking, because when you ask that question, the majority of people start counting dispos, TCs, acquisitions. You know what I mean? A couple of their core marketing VA people, like who runs their departments and all that stuff, not really including that they've hired 10 cold callers from Egypt or something like that.
Mm-hmm. There is a small percentage of people, though, that do have teammates doing lead gen and lead intake too.
True.
All right, let's keep going on this. So the next one is how is the majority of your team paid? So the options here, and then I'll walk through the results. Were just hourly,
commission only. I'm sorry. What? Go.
Hourly, salary, hourly with commission, salary with commission, and then commission only. Okay. So 10% of people said hourly with no commission. 3% of people said salary with no commission, and then we've got 23% hourly with commission, 33% salary with commission, and then 30% commission only. That surprised me that there's 30% with commission only.
It's smart, though.
I mean, it is smart. It's great from a business standpoint. I think you can lose employees quicker by having that as your way to pay.
Yeah, because with commission only. So I did that for a time, and I remember, like, one of the responses, and it happened, was, well, if I'm only getting paid commission only, I might as well just go do this myself. And that had a lot to do with, I think, the structure of my team at the time, and not so much, and the people, not so much that commission only is bad. But that's interesting, though. But this only furthers my point that I think a lot of people are really thinking about their core team and not so much, because you're not paying your data guy on commission only, right? Or your TC person on commission only. So there's some differences in the data. But like salary with commission, Like I see that. That's what I thought would be the biggest thing. Is that the biggest?
It is, but only by 3%. And hourly with commissions not far off it either.
Because hourly
Marginally.
with commissions, I feel like now we're getting into the virtual teams of like
The
how many
virtual teams, yeah.
people who are running, because that's what I am, right? So I run a mix of the hourly and commission and salary and commission because I have in office and virtual. So like that's kind of where I would say the commission only. Like I was reading somebody, they switched to a commission only, but they also produce a lot of. I mean, I think they're doing like 20 to 30 deals. So you go to commission only, you better make sure your team's still eating.
Yeah, that's the thing is you got to keep the pace of marketing up like all the time. Like in order to keep your team happy, you have to keep qualified leads coming in. Like if you're trying a new marketing method and it doesn't work out and you've got funds in the bank and you can still pay their salaries, like everybody's okay. But if it's like shit, like your commission only and all of a sudden the leads dry up because you switched to a new marketing method, a lot more risky.
I bet that hourly one too. I bet that's more like that one, maybe a husband and wife duo with a bunch of support, or maybe like
Yeah.
two buddies who are
Yeah.
like doing all the sales and stuff themselves, dispo and acquisition, and then they just pay a bunch of VAs to run
Yep.
everything behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And listen,
All right.
wait. And listen, I just want to say this. My opinion of this is I think you could potentially, and this is kind of what I got going on with my software, is I think potentially the best strategy is all of it together, specific for the role.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds complicated to.
John, that's why I've.
Is that a leading question?
I know. I set you up for that.
All right. The next one here is what percentage of your team is remote? And I want you guys to throw out a guess. It was 0%.
I'm going to say more than 50,
50%, 75%, or 100%. What do you guys think is
75. I'm going 75.
Yeah.
The majority of people are 75% or more remote because that I think blends well with what everyone wishes their lifestyle business would be like.
Yeah. What do you think, Carlos?
My gut was 60%, but if those are the options, I'd go 75%.
All right, here we go. Boom. 48% of people are 100% remote. 13% of people are 75% remote.
I knew I should have said 50. Shit.
17% of people are 50%. And then 10% of people are 25%. And then only 10% of the 29 responses are all in person.
Well, I guess we weren't that far off.
No, we weren't. But if this was price or right, we would have lost.
Yeah.
That's true. I thought that was interesting, the amount of people that were 100%. If I had more time to dig into this data, like it would be fun to say, okay, of the 100% that are remote, what were their team sizes? And kind of do like a.
I guarantee the people that are 100% remote have a virtual TC, a virtual acquisitions, and a virtual dispo. Because I know a guy who runs this, and it's how I used to run my team too. I just ended up not liking it, but you have that, and then of course everybody else is easily virtual. The hardest people to train for virtual is your acquisition rep and keeping that culture, and then your dispo guy keeping that culture. Everybody else is just scrubbing for buyers, doing the marketing, cleaning your data, pushing your marketing out. Your TC, that's another one you got to stay on top of, make sure they're doing their job, following up with all your files. But yeah, I mean, so it's easy to go 100% virtual. I just stand by having run both, that I think in office is the way to go.
What do you think about the 10.3% is 0% remote? That's interesting. And I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth. I'm like, is that low? Is that high? Is that right?
I feel like they're just not considering their VAs. Like, and that's the problem. If we had our boy band Remote Latinos back on here, Esteban, he would argue with that, because I'm sure they're just not considering all their remote people as actual staff. So like, again, there's some statistics are only as good as the sample and the questions asked in that sample. So, take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the 75% is interesting. I would have thought there'd be more hybrids.
I'm loving the survey. Anything that's any of the survey stuff, I'm really digging.
It's interesting. So the people that answered 0%, one of them is a 5 to 10 person team. One of them is a 2 to 5, and then another 5 to 10. So At least 2 of them are, pretty good sized teams, and they're all in office. One of them was salary with commission, and just salary. Interesting. One of them is wow. Interesting. All right, cool. Here's the next question. I like making you guys guess. So here's the question. How much do you pay your lead managers per hour? The options were $1 to $3, $4 to $7.
I know
$7
how
to
much I pay
$14,
mine.
13 plus.
I'm gonna say 4. I know the average people are trying to get below 4, but I'm gonna say it's 4 to 7 is the majority.
Yeah, that's got to be the Vegas odds.
All right, 4 to 7. Ding, ding, ding.
I know, but
don't have any was a big one too, but
the problem is that you needed to cut it off at 5 to 7 and 3 to 5, because I guarantee the majority of that 4 to 7 is around $4.50 to $5. I guarantee they're between $4 to $5 inside that range.
Interesting. I did think I was kind of surprised at that range too. I was expecting more. There was zero people said $1 to $3. So maybe you're right.
because no one's paying. You can't get anybody. I mean, John, I don't even know where $1 to $3 came in. Like, if you fucking pay us a fucking $1,
that was a trap. That was a trap just to see who would click on it and be like, all right, we're reporting you to like Better Business Bureau or something.
Yeah, fucking human ethics.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I believe it. I mean, 100%. And then I think you get the 7 to 13, and the 13 plus are probably people who are like, well, I really pay salary plus, deal commission. And then the 7 to 13, I guarantee, is a high value, somebody who's bilingual from like Costa Rica or something like that, who's a very high end. I would pay somebody $7 to $8, $9 an hour as a TC overseas if they were bilingual and professional and handled it, and I didn't have to do anything. Yeah.
I do find it interesting that people that said don't have any lead managers. 2 of them were 10 plus teams. So I'm like, I mean, again, like.
But again, you don't need. If you ask me this question, I don't have lead managers.
Right, and I was like, okay, what I want to know what kind of leads you're generating, what kind of volume you're doing. You've got a good employee base, so
like I equate, like when we're thinking this, like I just exchanged in my mind lead managers for follow-up specialists.
Right.
For a moment there, I was thinking TC and I got confused, but then follow-up specialist is kind of mine, and like where we're at with our follow-up specialist is around, I think it's the 550-ish range. But we also pay, so it's $5, I believe, and then I'm going to make this up. I'd have to check 50-cent bump to add on bilingual. So we have like a Spanish bump for any one of our positions. You automatically get paid more if you're fluent in Spanish. So we bump because we hire all over. So
yeah.
But then we also give deals, or we give deal bonuses, contract bonuses, deal bonus if one of their thing turns into a deal.
Nice.
Because again, follow-up specialists
will be happy to hear. We'll be happy to hear the bilingual bump.
Yeah, I think it's important that you compensate for that. I mean, in America, we do the same thing all the time, right? You get paid commensurate with experience and skill. And then like there's you get graded based on things that you have, and people will pay more for certain skill levels. I think there shouldn't be a difference in overseas. The problem is everybody whatever. Never mind, keep going.
All right, next question. How much on average do your sales team members make per year? So we use the word sales to kind of compensate acquisitions and dispositions. So
hang on. What are we thinking here? I'm saying.
Well, let me give you the options.
Okay.
Let me give you the options. 0 to 50K, 50 to 75K, 75K to 100K, 100K to 150K.
That's mine.
150K plus.
75 to 100. I think great teams are making 150 plus. I think your average, because we're so saturated in this market, I think you pay somebody 36K base and then they're making like another 50 in commissions, I think would be like an average 50 to 60. Yeah, I would say 75 to 100.
75 to 100. What do you think, Carlos?
I'm trying to base it off.
Because we're saying average, right?
Average. There is another question that talks about the top, like your unicorns, your stallions.
I'm sticking.
I'm trying to go off of some of the survey questions just to get a grasp of the team structure. Just to play Angel's advocate, I'll go 50 to 75K.
All right. Carlos wins.
What the fuck? That sucks.
23%
that's
make
horrible.
150K. Okay. 50 to 75K, 33%. 75 to 100K, 14.3%. And then 100 to 150, 23.
I take it back. It's not necessarily horrible because if you think about the lifestyle in office, like okay, 50 to
That's
the
not
average,
bad.
the
That's
median
not bad
income,
for the average.
in America is like 54K right now, and
Mhm.
it's like that's actually sitting in some office job doing some bullshit. Here, you probably got if you're working for a wholesaler, he's probably pretty fucking awesome because the demographic of people are probably laid back, chill dudes. They probably got a ping pong table set up. You're probably chit chatting most of the day with people in there. You probably have, it's a pretty good atmosphere to
Pizza
work
and
in and
wings on
make.
Friday.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So like, it's not
Maybe
a
you crack a
bad
beer
thing.
at 2:00 on Friday, something like that.
Yeah, but I feel that, and that's probably because of the saturation of the average subpar wholesalers. But that 100 to 150 is kind of where you would think everyone would want to be because that's the
Yeah.
promise we make when we hire, right? Like in
Mhm.
2-3 years, you're making six figures.
Yep. All right.
Ah.
So then let's ask the next question. The
I
next
wonder
question
though,
is,
hang on. I wonder though, and it sucks that the survey questions can only be like one tier, but like the question then would be of that, are these the commission only people? Like which one of these are commission only and which one of these are salary plus commission? You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
that's complicated.
I know.
I would like to know that too. All right.
Don't
Here's
worry,
the
I'll
next
have those
question.
stats for you in a year.
Yeah, exactly. How much does your best
Oh, this is easy.
sales
This
team
is
member
easy.
make per
Easy.
year?
Give
Same
me.
options though. I gave it another tier, so there's 150 to 200K.
I'm saying it should be 150 plus, but I'm gonna guess 100. If your range is like 100 to 150, I'm saying that's probably the average top person making today. But I think it should be 150 plus if they're your top guy.
Okay.
Is it the same? Is it the same options for questions?
Same options though. There's another an additional tier, 150 to 200K.
I was just gonna go because it's the average. This has to be right. I'll just go one tier up, 75 to 100K for top.
75 times. Okay. All right. Brandon.
Oh shit! It's really evenly split though. It's like very.
It is evenly split. So
Wow! Look at that,
150
150 to 200.
Yeah, I know. 20% say 150 to 200K. But the biggest section was 100 to 150K, 25%, and then 75 to 100K got 20%.
Shout out to the small audience that has a $1 an hour lead manager that's also doing acquisitions that gets paid under 5K a year.
And listen, to add some context to this, like when I was running virtual, my closers were making between 0 and 50K. You know what I mean? So like you have to take it with a grain of salt because we're
which is
hiring closers
a
like
great income overseas.
Yeah. You're hiring $7 an hour, giving like $200 deal bonuses, contract bonuses, and stuff. They're probably making between 25 and 40K a year overseas, and you're banking a lot of money. But in office, like that 150 to 200, I think that should be an aspirational thing for anybody leading a team because you want your guys to eat, and you got to think that directly correlates with how much money you make. Because if I'm pulling in $1 million a year, I'm giving you a commission off my gross / net, not my operational net, but like my sales net. I mean, if you're doing $1 million and you're paying like an 8%, 10% bonus, that's 100K in commissions off your first mil. So at that point, if you're only $1 million, you probably only got one rep anyway. At $1 million, you probably shouldn't be having 2 or 3 reps if you're only pulling in $1 million. So that guy should be making that 100 plus base. That should be like 125, 130 right there. If my numbers are roughly accurate. And that's a good pay, dude. Again, add in the lifestyle, add in like the camaraderie of like just hanging out in a sales office. It's a whole different atmosphere.
Yep,
You're making it's a good value. If you can make 6 figures and go to work every day having fun, you've won life.
It's not a bad life at all.
But the problem is The problem is like everyone then says I want more, and then they don't realize they sacrifice the enjoyment of their life
Right.
and to deal with the
Yeah.
stress and the anxiety and the stress of trying to do this on your own. Like, think about it. You go home as a salesperson, right? If there's any like teens on here listening, like you go home as a salesperson and you get to hang out with your kids. You go on vacation and you get to actually vacation.
Mhm.
You go home on the weekend and you don't have to pull out your work. Maybe you come in on a Saturday to crush a couple deals, but when you're home, you're at home. When I go home, I'm worrying about my marketing. I'm worrying about the data we're going to buy. I'm worrying about who did what job. I'm worrying about paying people. I'm worrying about everything. I'm worrying about scaling the vision, all of
Oh,
that stuff. I'm
100%.
never on break.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting here telling me I make 150 to 200K, get the enjoyment of life, pizza parties on Friday, pool tables, ping pong tables in the office, where I'm not forced to be at my desk, I'm chit chatting it up, telling jokes, laughing with the guys, like, bro, that's a win.
Good
That's
stuff,
a
right?
win.
Yeah. All right, last question. How much on average does your transaction coordinator make per year?
36 to 50. What's the ranges?
0 to 30K, 30K to 50K, 50 to 75K,
Ooh.
75 to 100K, 100K plus, and don't have any.
I think a TC should be making between 50 and 75, but I'm going to say between 30 and 50 just based on the previous structures of the teams that we've been
Yeah,
seeing.
just go. I'm between both of those to go Angels advocate. I'll go 50 to 75. I think there is going to be a large amount of people that don't have a transaction coordinator though, like a
Yeah,
specific one.
I'm not going to lie about that. That's got to be a
I'll
true
say over
statement.
15%. If I could
I've
do a
been,
prop
yeah.
bet here, if I could do my own prop bet parlay, I'll say that over 15% don't have a transaction coordinator.
All right, here we go, guys.
Holy shit, Carlos, you were way off. 57% don't
Well,
have
I
a
said
team.
at
What
minimum.
the
I was
fuck are they
expecting I
doing?
was expecting maybe like 30.
That should be like your first hire.
I mean, I think it might be, I don't know. It might be
So
interesting
I won
to,
the parlay then because I got 50
Yeah,
to
you did. You did.
75K.
You
I
did.
don't
You
have any.
did. But that's where
yeah,
I think everyone should be. The 30 to 50, I was just assuming. That don't have any, it's like
a lot, right? Nine people.
I
And
remember when
so,
I got mine and I was like I lost a deal and I had a memo and I released the memo without fighting because I knew I had fucked up and it was literally my fault. And the lady, her response was, "Well, I haven't heard from you." And she didn't. I signed the contract, went to see her, sold the deal to my buyer, let title do their thing, never talked to her, never followed up with her. I just assumed we were all showing up to closing. And then she didn't pick up. And when I finally got a hold of her, she had already sold to somebody else like a couple days ago. And her response, and this was like a 45-day close, right? This is back in the day. And her response was, "I didn't know you were still buying it. I never heard from you." And I just was like flabbergasted and I was like, "Cool, I'll release that memo." I
you
didn't
literally
say
got
that,
the
but
contract and then never talked to her again?
I did 100%. And it wasn't like it was,
Like
I don't know
no
what my,
email, no text, no
bro, it
phone
was
call,
nothing.
just like
Like if I'm remembering, this was like 7 years ago. It was like 2016,
that's a
17.
good
But
learning
yeah,
lesson right there.
yeah, it was. I don't, and I remember that. And when they called me about the memo, I'm getting my timelines mixed up. But when they called me about the memo, I remember just being like, "This was my fault. This was
Hmm.
not. This was all. Yeah, I'll release it. This was like, I don't even deserve this." I went out and hired a TC. I knew
Hmm.
what I was good at and what I wasn't and follow because I was you know what I was doing for those 30, 40 days? Getting more fucking deals. I
Right.
was on the
Yeah.
phone, I was driving for dollars, I was worrying about making money, not following up. So yeah, that was when I made my first mistake and that was the last time I ever did that.
I will say the majority of the people that selected don't have any were in the just me or 2 to 5 team size. There's only 2 of them
If
that
you're
are
two
in the
to
top
five, bro,
10.
like you gotta have a TC, unless one of the 2 to 5 is your partner who just does TC, and you're just not
Right.
counting them because they own the business with you. But
Yeah,
like,
and that's what I was kind of wondering is like how many of these people saying don't have any or saying yeah, like a business owner is doing this responsibility. Maybe they've got acquisitions people in, but they haven't fully grown into having a
yeah,
TC. And
And
I
that's the
think it's
thing.
also like what the business owner are good at and enjoy, right? If they prefer to do TC, dispo kind of stuff over acquisition stuff, then that's fine.
Yeah, I see this, man. And so one of the things is the payment of people. So how am I saying this? Paying of people, you need to pay for what you expect to. So
Hmm.
like every one of these people needs to be getting bonused on something. You need to align their interest with your interest. So I created a software, right, called it's Transactions, Employees, and Dispo, and it's called TED. And one of the things that we have, one of the reasons why I did it is I wanted to be able to structure and pay bonuses in a certain way and be able to keep track of it. Because before we had it in Excel, it was so hard for Brittany, who pays everyone, and Arjun, who manages everyone, to like remember all these different things for every single one. But my mind
Because all
was
the different roles have different.
all the different roles. So like if you're getting paid for uh, contacts or contracts and deals, like that's your job role, is to get contracts and get deals. I'm paying you bonuses on your minimum expectations, right? And not
Hmm.
they don't have to be crazy bonuses, but if somebody meets those things, I want to reward them, because by rewarding them, it rewards me. I don't want to be the only person celebrating at the end of the day when I made 50 G's, right? Like I want somebody else to get excited. So TCs, they should be getting paid per deal closed, right? Like they should be getting bonuses, and it should be like a flat fee. So how are you tracking that? So one of the things is with the software that I wanted to do was be able to create the actual pay structure, pay scale, bonus scale too, and
Okay.
then allow the employees to see it. So one of the things I think we have a problem in this industry, and so when you hiring people overseas, the biggest complaint, I never got paid. They said they never closed this deal when I know it was a good deal, and probably it wasn't. Okay, it probably was a shit lead you sent over. You thought it was a gold mine. They couldn't close it. Now you feel ripped off because there was a lack of communication between the employer and the employee about what
Yeah, like
bonuses they
what's happening with this deal? Like,
what's
yeah,
happening with the deal.
I've heard people talking in that situation all the time. Like people are wanting to, they're getting commission on it, and they're like
Yeah,
anxiously awaiting to know what is
not
happening with that
not
deal.
just overseas, but like salespeople too. Hey man,
Yeah.
like if they're like hungry crack addicts. Like, how's that deal coming, man? Is that closing on Friday? I scheduled to close for Friday. What's going on with this, man? And it's like you want to include everybody in your meetings, but at a certain point, you don't want every sales rep sitting in your TC or your dispo meetings because they need to be doing their job. But you want to keep them informed. You may have a whiteboard with updated stuff, but that doesn't really tell them what's going on with it. And then
Hmm.
how they're pay, and then their tab. We all know it, right? Like you're tabulating in your head, like, okay, I'm at like 50. Jesus, I got 50K in closings. So, but they don't know. Did you renegotiate? How does that mess up?
Yeah.
And then the other
Yeah.
thing that
Like what's the because yeah, that
what's my
always
gross?
retains.
What's my
Yeah.
gross? What's my
Yeah.
gross sales for the month? And how does my
Mhm.
commission structure work off of
Hmm.
that? What am I getting? So one of
Are
the things
you
I
are you
wanted,
JVing the deal?
yeah. And you know how when you're closing like 10, 15 deals a month, or like let's just say contracts, you're working that many, like it's hard to update everybody all the time. So what happens is you have this separation of communication, and it's not necessarily intentional, but especially with overseas people, they don't feel connected. So I
Hmm.
wanted to create something that allows the user, the team owner, right, the business owner, to be able to pay people and not actually send them money, but log, track everything, and then be able to keep track of it, create time cards, but then have the employee have a place that they log in and see how much they've earned. They see their
Yeah.
time card. They see basically, and the other question we would get right for the time card thing is every Friday, every VA would message us, or on Monday, depending on when you pay them. Is my payment processed yet? I don't see it in my bank account. Hey, boss, when am I getting paid today? It'd be
Hey,
like
boss.
1 o'clock. It'd be like, you're getting paid the same fucking time. You get paid all the fucking time. But it's their weekly pay, right? So they're like, when am I getting
Hmm.
paid? It's 2 o'clock now. The bank hasn't cleared it. Did you make the payment? So we
Hmm.
wanted something that would show them not just what their earnings are, but that the payment was processed on our end. Their time card was approved. It was paid. Here's their normal hourly pay or salary. Here's their bonuses. But more importantly, we wanted them to log in, and if they're based off of deals and contracts, they can see along with the TC's updates, not all the details, but they see the statuses and where that deal is along its closing pipeline to be able to know whether it's still alive, if it's getting closed, if it's been dispoed, what the net commissions are, like what the projected profits are, and being able to show them that.
Oh, that's really cool. And I mean, it's not like you used to do this in Excel, like with each role having different comps, different ways to track time.
If
and
I
then
showed you my comp plan, every role from cold callers, follow-up specialists, dispos, we'll call them junior dispo themselves, acquisition, all my virtual teams. Then the managers had a different comp plan on top because their comp plan is based off of the performance of their team. Same thing with QA. QA's had a different comp plan. And it got really crazy, but more importantly, none of them knew what they were making.
Right. They had
So
zero idea.
We knew, but they didn't know. So that was the thing, is like, how do they, like, what keeps them motivated is knowing how much you're making and tabulating that in your mind and saying, oh, I'm about to make that much money.
That's really exciting. I don't think anything exists that does that in our industry.
It does now.
It does now, yeah.
It does now. But that's because, go ahead.
I was going to say, you have to give us a demo one day.
I will give you a demo. It's going to be pretty sweet. The transaction part of it is the core thing, but the employee side of it is, I think, what's going to bring, for a lot of virtual people, bring your teams together in an understanding of like fairness and ethics of like, listen, I promised you a bonus on any deal that you pushed over. And now you could see whether or not, because it automatically, right, when you push that deal through and Carlos is assigned to it as the follow-up specialist, and I promise Carlos, let's say he's virtual, $100, right, for any deal that gets, or even a contract. Let's say he just gets a $10 contract if it turns into a contract, and then $100 if it turns into a deal. Carlos wants to know, oh, look at that got a contract, and then it shows up in his little pipeline that he's got $10 coming to him on his next paycheck. And now he's like, now his mind, and when you start, like, I used to be like this when I was younger, just trying to earn a buck and I was hustling, is like, you start adding it in your mind. You know,
right.
$10, if I could do another one. And you see it visually, it's a whole nother level of motivation for your team.
Super exciting. All right.
Yeah, I was.
It's like Tony Stark tool named as well, TED, the acronym.
Yeah. It was funny because I posted that we added time tracking, which is pretty cool. So it's not screen recording. It's just based on like a punch clock, like back in the day at factories, punch in, punch out. And somebody messaged me on Instagram and they started questioning, like, why would I do that? And they're like, why don't you just use Hubstaff or something? And I explained, well, Hubstaff doesn't really do it. And they're like, well, it time tracks. And I said, yeah, but that's all it does. I want not just a time track, but I want to create time cards. I want my finance admin people to be able to log when they're paying people. I want my employee to be able to log in and see all of that. Like, that's the difference, right? So, we're looking to come out, man. We should have this thing released by Thanksgiving is the goal.
Nice. Super exciting.
And then we'll be on board.
We'll certainly get a sneak preview of it here on Let's Talk Real Estate. I really want to quickly just go, if somebody came for a guide to wholesaling employee compensation, I just want to run through these slides real quick to give you kind of like the recommendations of what you should be doing. I don't know if that's going to make my screen bigger. All right, cool. The majority of the teams were 2 to 5. How are the majority of people paid? Pretty evenly between commission only, salary with commission, and hourly with commission. So it certainly seems in our industry that commission is important. Give your peeps commission. Percentage remote, the majority of people were 100% remote. So that's really intriguing to see. How much do you pay your lead managers? So this is the guide, right? So the majority of people were paying the $4 to $7 hour, and Papa P gave us a little clarity there. He's like, I probably bet most of them are in the $450 kind of range, and if I had done 1 to 5, majority of people would have been in the 1 to 5. So
should have done 3 to 5. No one's getting paid $1, bro. But yeah, I got you.
True. You get what I'm saying. How much an average do your sales teams make per year? The biggest one there was 50 to 75K. There were still a good amount of people on average in the 75 to 150, but it seems like 50 to 75K is the answer there. And then what's your best making? 100 and 150K was the clear winner there. With still a good amount of people in 150 to 200K.
I love that.
And then transaction coordinator, a majority of people said don't have any, which we thought was strange. Get a TC, you heard Brandon's horror story, but the majority of people who do have one say 50 to 75K is what a TC coordinator makes.
And then my tip to everybody is pay for what bonus on what you expect. Whatever their measurables are, there needs to be bonuses tied to that so their interests align with yours, because your metrics, right, your measurables that you're giving them, obviously just reverse engineer into what your profit and what your deal goals are and what your earnings goals are. So that means those measurables are so important to you, they need to become important to them. And the only way is if you compensate them or bonus them on those measurables, not just giving them a flat out deal bonus. That's fine too. You can add that in, but if they're supposed to have a certain amount of conversations a day or process calls a day or whatever it is, talk time, whatever it is you want, whatever their job is based off of and their measurable is, you should be bonusing for that.
Lovely ending advice.
Doesn't have to be a crazy amount though. It could just something fair, get them motivated, get them hungry.
Wise words from a very decent man.
Indeed. All right, guys. Have a great week. Carlos, enjoy your family. Happy Veterans Day to everybody watching this live or watching it in post. Say thanks for veteran, and we'll see you all next week.
Lock and load.
See you guys.